making headlines this hour. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz returns to Male following the conclusion of his 3-day tour of the inhabited islands of Lama Atoll. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces a series of sweeping policy measures, including the transfer of government construction projects to private firms, a tripling of the single-parent allowance, new financial support for children with thalassemia, and the nationwide establishment of police services ahead of schedule. And Minister Shaheen announces major reforms in mosque and Hajj affairs. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to PSM News in English with me, Abdullah Ahil. And now the news in detail. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz returns to Male following the conclusion of his 3-day tour of the inhabited islands of Lama Atoll. During the visit, the president traveled to all inhabited islands of the atoll: Kunahandu, Hitadu, Mamindu, Fonadu, Mava, Garn, Mundu, Mabazu, Kaladu, Istu, and Dambidu. He met with island councils, women's development committees or WDCs, and residents to engage in discussions on community well-being and development priorities. A delegation comprising cabinet ministers and heads of state-owned enterprises accompanied the president throughout the tour. Across the atoll, multiple development initiatives were formally launched and several agreements were signed for future undertakings. The projects and agreements focused on various sectors, including housing and infrastructure, education, healthcare, social welfare, and financial accessibility. Although some official inauguration ceremonies were postponed due to the adverse weather conditions, the president assured that all projects would proceed as planned with close monitoring and prioritization by the government. He reiterated the administration's commitment to working collaboratively with island communities to ensure sustained and equitable development across all sectors. In his remarks to the community, the president highlighted the government's commitment to strengthening air connectivity across the atoll. He announced that feasibility assessments are underway to identify the most suitable location for an additional airport and confirmed that the ongoing development of Kaddu Airport will be completed and upgraded to international status within 3 years. The president also announced new social welfare measures, including an increase in the allowance for single mothers and the introduction of a dedicated allowance for thalassemia patients effective from January 2026. He reaffirmed the fulfillment of his presidential pledge to establish police services on every inhabited island in the Maldives. Addressing the upcoming referendum scheduled for Saturday in Huludu, Midu, and Fedu of Addu City regarding the formation of separate councils, the president reiterated that the government maintains a neutral position. The visit reflects President Dr. Muiz's ongoing commitment to inclusive governance and community-centered development. We now bring you the call to prayer for Isha.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدًا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقامًا محمودًا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعته برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Welcome back to our English news program. We continue with the local headlines. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces a wide-ranging infrastructure initiative for Istu and Kaladu in Alam Atoll, committing to major investments in healthcare, transport, and tourism. Construction on key projects is expected to begin within the current year. The announcement was delivered during a community gathering with residents of both islands, where President Muiz outlined a series of measures aimed at strengthening essential services and advancing regional development. Central to the program is the establishment of a new 30-bed hospital designed to serve both Istu and Calado. The president confirmed that construction of the facility will commence this year. President Muiz underscored the importance of road development, describing it as foundational to the success of all other infrastructure efforts. He noted that progress remains contingent on resolving long-standing issues with the island's sewage system. The current system, which took considerable time to implement, is not in a usable state and must be addressed before road construction can proceed. Plans to improve maritime access include the development of Calado Harbor, a project formerly awarded to the Maldives Transport and Contracting Company, or MTCC. The agreement was signed during the official ceremony by Minister of Construction, Housing and Infrastructure Dr. Abdullah Muttalib and MTCC Managing Director Ahmad Saudi. The government expects the harbor project to provide a permanent solution to the navigation and berthing difficulties faced by the island's residents. MTCC, the contracting party, is recognized for its extensive engagement in infrastructure development across multiple regions of the Maldives. During his visit to Lama Atoll, President Muiz identified airport development as the most frequently raised issue, with 3 islands requesting the facility. He stated that sustainability would guide the planning process. One proposed location offers a distinctive advantage: the absence of a need for land reclamation, which would significantly reduce costs. The president confirmed that a final decision on the site of Lama Atoll's second airport will be made shortly, with construction to follow soon after. Economic diversification is also part of the agenda. President Muiz suggested that the historical significance of Istu and Calado would be leveraged to expand tourism. He proposed that heritage-focused initiatives may generate substantial income for Calado. He concluded by reaffirming his administration's commitment to advancing multiple projects aimed at improving the convenience and overall development of the citizens of Istu and Calado. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces a series of sweeping policy measures, including the transfer of government construction projects to private firms, a tripling of the single-parent allowance, new financial support for children with thalassemia, and the nationwide establishment of police services ahead of schedule. Addressing residents of Gan in Lama Atoll, President Muiz declared that a broad range of government projects would be handed to private construction companies within the next 10 days. He said the initiative would be carried out strictly within the framework of existing laws and regulations. The administration argues that the transfer will stimulate economic growth by direct funds to multiple companies, thereby fostering financial prosperity for families and contributing to the expansion of the economy. In the same address, President Muiz turned to social welfare, announcing a major increase in financial support for single parents. Beginning in January, the single mother's allowance will rise to $194.55 per child, tripling the current rate. Currently, single parents, both mothers and fathers, receive $64.85 per child, with a cap of $648.51 per family per month. The new policy represents a substantial restructuring of social support. The president also pledged systemic reforms to health care for children suffering from thalassemia, a genetic blood disorder prevalent in the country. Beginning next year, a new thalassemia allowance of $64.85 per child will be introduced, supported by a budgetary allocation of $758,766.23. According to official figures, 982 children are currently registered as thalassemia patients nationwide. Services previously concentrated in Male have been relocated to the Orange Hia facility in Hulumale, while arrangements for state-funded bone marrow transplants have been strengthened. Several critical diagnostic tests, once unavailable domestically, can now be conducted within the Maldives. President Muiz concluded his address with a declaration that police services have now been established across all inhabited islands, completing a core electoral pledge 2 months ahead of schedule. The milestone was marked on Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. when the final deployment was completed in Rasketimu Ra Atoll. President Muiz, addressing residents of Gan, also announced an accelerated timeline for the completion of the National Ferry Network, pledging that the Raja Transport Link or RTL will begin operating in all remaining atolls within the next 5 months. For citizens awaiting the service, the president provided a clear timeline. He said by February or March 2026, the RTL network will be operational in Lama Atoll and in all other atolls where service has not yet begun. He confirmed that Lama Atoll will see the service commence as soon as the requisite ferries are completed. President Muiz also pledged the construction of 300 housing flats in Gan this year and confirmed compensation for individuals who relocated to the island from other parts of the country. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz appoints 3 new members to the Maldives Media and Broadcasting Commission following their election by the Parliament. The appointments were made under the authority granted to Parliament by the Maldives Media and Broadcasting Regulation Act. The Maldives Media and Broadcasting Commission comprises 7 members, 3 of whom are elected by the Parliament and 4 by media representatives. The newly appointed members are Muhammad Farashat, Safa Shafiq, and Uza Aminat Sarahat Izzat. On the 13th of October 2025, 4 members were formally appointed to represent broadcasters and other media organizations on the commission. These included 2 representatives from broadcasting entities and 2 from other media organizations. The newly formed commission will assume the combined responsibilities of the former Maldives Media Council or MMC and the Maldives Broadcasting Commission or Broadcom. All documentation and archives pertaining to newspapers and magazines currently registered with the relevant government ministry will be transferred to the new commission. Moving forward, new media and broadcasters will be required to apply for registration directly with this commission rather than the relevant ministry. Minister of Islamic Affairs Dr. Muhammad Shahim Ali Saeed announces sweeping reforms, including the termination of a stalled mosque project and a legislative overhaul of the Maldives Hajj Corporation, as the administration of President Dr. Mohamed Muiz seeks to accelerate projects and restore oversight. Addressing Parliament, Minister Shahim said the government had inherited significant delays and administrative failures from the former Maldivian Democratic Party or MDP-led government, particularly in infrastructure contracts and Hajj governance. One of the most immediate steps will be the cancellation of a mosque project in Kendu Ba Atoll. The contract, awarded to Fastline Private Limited for $1 million, was intended to deliver a 500-person mosque within a year. The absence of an on-site engineer led to construction that deviated from architectural drawings, halting further work. Despite repeated site visits, directives, and progress meetings, the problems were not resolved. The minister noted that the previous government had initiated the project shortly before the presidential election and had paid $149,162.59 to the company on the 8th of November 2023. President Muiz has since ordered the matter prioritized and legal proceedings to terminate the contract are now underway. Attention is also turning to Hajj policy. The ministry is consulting scholars on a proposal to allow financially capable individuals who are permanently incapacitated by illness to appoint a representative to perform their obligations through Hajj al-Badal. Minister Shahim stressed that Saudi Arabia prohibits sending individuals with major permanent illnesses visitors to Hajj, a measure intended to protect lives. He criticized the previous government's decision to allocate 5% of the Hajj quota to individuals with serious illnesses, calling it a violation of Saudi regulations. The proposal for Hajj al-Badal, he added, is supported by scholars who permit a proxy to perform the rites on behalf of those who are financially able but physically unable. The ministry is working to establish a fair policy to ensure that sick and disabled individuals receive appropriate services. The minister also announced that 15 major Islamic projects are scheduled for completion before Ramadan, including mosques with capacities of 500 to 700 people and new Islamic centers nationwide. Legislative reform is also underway. The ministry is drafting new laws to restructure the Maldives Hajj Corporation, ensuring that the ministry retains a defined role. Minister Shaheen criticized changes made by the previous government that removed the ministry's representative from the corporation's board. The ministry is also focused on strengthening the Hajj Corporation's financial base. Citing Malaysia's Hajj Fund as a model, the minister said long-term investments in real estate and hotels are essential. The company says Warner Bros. Discovery considers an outright sale following interest from several potential buyers, even as it moves forward with its previously announced split into two companies. Shares of the company rose about 8% in pre-market trading. Warner Bros. Strategic review comes after it received an unsolicited bid, the company said, but did not name the bidder. A sale or split would mark one of the most consequential reshaping moments in the media industry, potentially prompting other legacy media houses to revisit their own structures. Media reports indicate that Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison is in talks to acquire the combined company before its planned separation into Warner Bros. And Discovery Global. The company rejected an initial bid from Paramount, Bloomberg News reported earlier this month, because the offer of around $20 per share was too low. Warner Bros. Discovery said there is no deadline or definitive timetable set for completion of the strategic alternatives review process. Skydance's advances soon after snapping up Paramount speaks to the Ellison family's voracious appetite to dominate the global media landscape amid a favorable regulatory regime in the U.S. Streaming has fundamentally reshaped the media industry, leaving traditional broadcasters with mounting debt, higher content budgets, and fragmented viewership. The decline of legacy media, driven by linear TV cord-cutting, as well as the shift of audiences and advertisers to streaming platforms, has forced traditional media companies to rethink their business structures. Warner Bros. Discovery, home to CNN, HBO Max, and the Harry Potter franchise, has been trimming jobs and plans to split its cable and streaming units by next year to unlock asset value. Taking a look at world affairs, U.S. President Donald Trump says he thinks he will have a very successful meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, but also said perhaps the encounter won't happen. Trade tensions between the U.S. and China, the world's two biggest economies, have lingered. Disputes over tariffs, technology, and market access remained unresolved.
I'm going to see President Xi in 2 weeks, going over to South Korea. We're going to meet in South Korea. We're going to talk about a lot of things. They want to discuss the fact that they're paying 157% tariff. It's a little higher than they thought. And we're doing very well. I think we're going to do well in that negotiation.
Trump is scheduled to be in South Korea next week at a summit meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, Forum. Trump had previously stated that he wishes to see America and China prosper together. The APEC in South Korea 2025 is the annual meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum of its leaders that will be held in November. This is the second time South Korea is hosting the summit. Update on sports. Arsenal storms to a third successive Champions League victory by blowing away Atletico Madrid 4-0 thanks to a devastating second half broadside at the Emirates Stadium. What had been a compelling clash with little between the sides became an Arsenal rout with goals by Gabriel Martinelli and a brace from Victor Gyökeres, leaving Diego Simeone's side shell-shocked.
Well, obviously, I'm extremely happy and proud about the performance and the results.
In a modest kitchen tucked within her community in Hore, Nigeria, Ahmad Iyabo prepares cheese using traditional methods passed down from her mother. With more than 35 years of experience, Iyabo has built a livelihood around cheese making, a craft she inherited and never left behind. Iyabo's cheese is made from cow's milk, sourced from local breeders, and used to produce a range of dairy products including yogurt and cheese. But insecurity in the outskirts of the region has disrupted direct access to milk, forcing buyers to rely on middlemen. Her process begins with heating fresh cow's milk over an open fire. Juice extracted from the Sodom apple plant is then added as a natural curdling agent. After about 30 minutes, the curd forms and is scooped out for processing. Iyabo says the freshness of the milk is what makes her cheese popular among buyers. While Iyabo supplies cheese to customers outside the region, local demand remains strong. Residents in Ilorin say the cheese is a staple in their daily meals. But in urban centers like Uyo, imported mozzarella has become the cheese of choice, especially in commercial kitchens. Chef Foniso Umuetuk grates mozzarella onto cheese dough before sliding it into the oven, a routine shaped by local tastes and the growing number of pizza outlets in the area. In the bustling markets of Kwara State, the centuries-old tradition of cheese-making continues to thrive. Vendors say demand is steady and sales are strong. Cheese lovers have found creative ways to incorporate the product into their meals, frying it or adding it to soups and stews. And that's all the news we have for today. We'll be back with any further updates. Until then, I'm Abdullah Ahil from PSM News.